Can you feel it? The pulse of 100 years past, ready to pull you into a whirlwind of change and wonder? Welcome, my friends, to an era so brief, yet so packed with drama, it might just blow your mind. This is Taisho 14 years of brilliance, struggle, and unbelievable stories. I'm Dr. Tokimeki, your ever-curious host, stand-up comedian, and storyteller. Think of me as your personal time travel guide to the most fascinating corners of Japanese history. Over the next few minutes, we'll unravel how Japan skyrocketed from samurai traditions to jazz cafes and modern fashion, all while the world spun into World War I and back again. Sound crazy? It totally is, and I can't wait to show you. Ready to dive in? Fasten your seatbelts or kimonos and let's embark on the short but thrilling ride called Taisho. Welcome to Chapter 1, my friends, where we set foot into the brand new era called Taisho. Let's see how a momentous farewell to Meiji turned into a fresh start for Japan. In 1912, Emperor Meiji passed away, marking the end of an era that had rapidly modernized Japan. Suddenly, the nation faced a brand new chapter under the reign of Emperor Taisho. Now, Emperor Taisho wasn't as robust as his father, and he struggled with health issues. This meant that, in many ways, the spotlight turned to the political leaders and intellectuals shaping the country's future. Imagine a TV miniseries that only lasts 14 episodes. That's how short the Taisho era was, just 14 years from 1912 to 1926. But don't let the length fool you, it's jam-packed with drama. All this happens while the world is on the brink of the First World War. So, picture Japan moving from samurai legacies to westernized fashion, from peaceful modernization to global conflict in just a blink. It's like binge-watching your favorite historical drama, except real. And hey, you won't run out of snacks unless the rice prices skyrocket, but we'll get to that in Chapter 3. So, are you ready to see how these 14 years shaped an entire nation? Let's explore the spark that lit the Taisho flame. Next up, the rise of a new kind of democracy and a whole lot of excitement. In 1913, a serious political shakeup, often called the Taisho political crisis, rocked the government. People demanded a government that respected their rights. It sparked something called the Gokan Undo, or the Constitutional Protection Movement. That's a fancy way of saying, hey, rulers, listen to us. Then along comes Prime Minister Hara Takashi, often called Hara-K, who formed Japan's first genuine party cabinet. No more stuffy old elites running the show alone. Now, actual politicians from real political parties took the helm. But hey, democracy didn't come easy. For one, only men with enough property or status could vote, no women allowed yet. Still, it was a big step toward letting everyday people have a say. Think of it as a beta version of democracy. Suddenly, street corners were alive with passionate speeches. Imagine politicians shouting, "Vote for me, or your rice bowl might be empty." Meanwhile, newspapers and magazines exploded in circulation. Everybody wanted to read about the latest scandals and gossip about who's wearing the fanciest top hat. In 1925, Japan passed the general election law, granting all adult males the right to vote. Sounds awesome, right? But here's the catch: they also introduced the Peace Preservation Law the same year, which clamped down on radical political ideas. So, while democracy was blooming, a big scary gate was also installed. Picture you've just been given a golden ticket to a huge party, everyone's invited. But the moment you step in, there's a bouncer warning you, have fun, but if you speak too loudly, you're out. That's what Taisho democracy felt like, a party with a side of paranoia. By now, you can see how Taisho democracy was a grand experiment, bold, imperfect, and occasionally contradictory. But guess what? The story doesn't stop here. Remember how the world was edging into the Great War? Japan's about to join, and with it comes a massive economic roller coaster. Ready for Chapter 3? Let's roll! Alright, folks. We've seen how democracy in Taisho Japan was growing, full of promise and yes, a few contradictions. But guess what? The entire planet was about to get shaken up by World War I. And Japan, well, it was ready to jump right into the fray. In 1914, the Great War erupted in Europe. Japan quickly declared war on Germany thanks to its alliance with Britain. Officially, it was to assist an ally, but let's be real, it was also a golden chance to expand Japan's influence in Asia. Japan's first big move? Seizing Germany's base in Qingdao. Picture a well-organized Japanese military capturing a European colony in China. In the blink of an eye, Japan grabbed itself some valuable footholds in Asia. So, while Europe was busy tearing itself apart, Japan became the go-to supplier of goods from weapons to textiles. Factories exploded in number, and businessmen saw yen signs in their dreams. This surge is what we call the Taisho Boom. This rapid growth brought more than just profits. It created new jobs, lured people from rural areas into the big cities, and fired up the imagination of entrepreneurs. Suddenly, Japan felt like a nation on the rise. But remember, any boom has a bust waiting around the corner. When the war ended in 1918, Europe started picking itself up. Demand for Japanese exports plunged. Factories that once roared with activity fell silent. And so, like a roller coaster reaching its peak, the Japanese economy plunged into a post-war recession. Imagine you're on the world's fastest roller coaster climbing, hearts pounding with excitement, then whoosh, you drop so fast your stomach does backflips. That's basically Taisho Japan's economy after the war. So that's World War I and the wild ride. It gave Japan huge profits, intense growth, and a hard crash. But the story doesn't end here, folks. Remember how the people's voices were getting louder? Soon, that frustration over economic turmoil would boil over into something big like a nationwide protest, maybe? Let's find out in Chapter 4. Welcome back, everyone. Last time, we saw Japan's economy plunge after the war. Factories slowed down, jobs vanished, and everyday folks felt the pinch. Well, guess what? When people's wallets shrink, tempers flare. Let's witness what happens when the price of rice skyrockets and a nation hits boiling point. In 1918, the price of rice, a staple food in Japan, went through the roof. Imagine your everyday bread or pasta doubling in cost overnight. For families already struggling, this was the final straw. It all started in a small fishing town called Yuzu in Toyama Prefecture. Women there organized protests, demanding fair rice prices. This spark quickly spread across the nation like wildfire fueled by desperation. As this fury spread, people started smashing rice stores, looting warehouses, and staging huge demonstrations. It wasn't just the countryside. Big cities like Osaka and Tokyo felt the heat too. The government at the time, led by Prime Minister Terashi Masatake, couldn't control the chaos, and it collapsed. Enter Hara Takashi Yep, our familiar friend from Chapter 2 who stepped in as Prime Minister. This massive wave of public outrage literally toppled a government. You might think, yes, the people have spoken, democracy wins. Well, partially. True, the public showed they wouldn't sit quietly when their livelihood was at stake. But remember, we're still a ways off from full universal suffrage and total freedom. Baby steps, folks. Imagine you're at a concert and the ticket prices suddenly triple. The fans riot, security panics, and the concert organizer steps down, replaced by someone who promises more reasonable prices. That's kind of what happened in 1918. When you mess with people's essentials like rice, watch out. So, the Rice Riots shook the foundations of Taisho, Japan, forcing the government to finally wake up to the people's needs. But hold on, the story's not over. We've still got cultural revolutions, fashion crazes, and yes, a massive earthquake on the horizon. Ready for Chapter 5? Let's keep this wild ride rolling. Welcome back, everyone. We've just been through the fiery Rice Riots and the intense political shifts. But even as protests shook the nation, another side of Taisho was sparkling under the city lights. Let's dive into the vibrant world of Taisho romance and modern culture. Ever heard of Moga and Mobo? They're short for modern girl and modern boy. Picture stylish, short-haired women in Western dresses and men sporting slick suits and hats. These urban trendsetters lit up the streets with their bold, Western-inspired fashion and carefree spirit. Welcome to the Taisho Boom! Picture smoky rooms filled with jazz music, waitresses in chic uniforms, and intellectuals debating the newest foreign novels. These cafes weren't just about coffee, they were hotspots for flirtation, avant-garde ideas, and a dash of scandal. Walking through Tokyo or Yokohama in the 1920s, you might spot a Western-style brick building right next to a traditional wooden shop. It was the age of wild architectural mashups like Art Deco facades adorned with Japanese motifs. The city felt like a living tapestry of East meets West. Meanwhile, in the literary scene, groups like the Shirakawa, White Birch, Society promoted humanism and individual expression. Writers like Mushino Koji Seniatsu and Shiga Naoya experimented with fresh styles. It was a renaissance of Japanese arts, where even European philosophies found a home. For women, too, doors were cracking open. More girls attended higher schools, and some even became factory workers or telephone operators. Yes, there were still huge barriers, but compared to the strictly traditional roles in previous eras, Taisho offered a hint of possibility. Picture strolling down a lanternlit street, hearing jazz from a cafe on one side and laughter from a kimono shop on the other. That's Taisho romance, a whimsical blend of old and new. For a brief moment, life seemed full of color and endless possibilities. Yet remember, all that glitter sometimes concealed deep cracks beneath. While people danced and dreamed, a catastrophic disaster loomed ahead. The Great Kanto Earthquake of 1923 would shake not just the ground but the very soul of Taisho. Ready for Chapter 6? Brace yourselves, it's going to be intense. Hey there, everyone. After soaking in the glitter of Taisho romance, it's time for a stark reminder that life can change in an instant. September 1st, 1923, Tokyo and Yokohama woke to a nightmare that would shake the era to its core. At 11:58 a.m., just before noon, the earth roared. Buildings toppled within seconds. But what truly magnified the horror were the fires that spread uncontrollably, fanned by strong winds. Imagine entire neighborhoods turning into infernos. Estimates say over 100,000 people lost their lives or went missing. Entire families vanished. Landmarks once bustling with modern life were reduced to rubble. The glamorous cafes, theaters, and department stores we saw, many were gone in hours. Amid the chaos, terrifying rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed foreigners were poisoning wells, igniting panic and violence. Lack of reliable info fueled fear and discrimination, leaving deep scars on communities. Yet in the midst of tragedy, acts of compassion shone through. Volunteers from all over Japan and even abroad rushed to help. Temporary shelters, soup kitchens, and medical relief popped up, proving that humanity can still unite in the darkest times. In the quake's aftermath, the government established the Imperial Capital Reconstruction Agency to redesign Tokyo. Wide roads, modern parks, and reinforced buildings became the new blueprint. Some even say it laid the groundwork for Japan's later urban planning. The Great Kanto Earthquake was a sobering lesson about nature's fury and our fragility. But it also revealed humanity's resilience, creativity, and capacity for solidarity. Taisho was never the same after 1923, but from the ruins, a new chapter of determination began to bloom. So, as the dust settled on a wounded capital, the Taisho era itself neared its final stretch. Political tides were shifting, and the glow of Taisho democracy and Taisho romance began to flicker. Ready for Chapter 7? We'll witness the curtain fall on this short yet unforgettable era. Welcome back, friends. After the Great Kanto Earthquake, Japan slowly began to rebuild. But as the dust settled, the Taisho era itself was fading. In these final years, political winds shifted, and the health of Emperor Taisho grew fragile. Emperor Taisho wasn't as robust as his father, Emperor Meiji. By the 1920s, his health was in steady decline, limiting his public appearances. This meant political figures and the crown prince, soon-to-be Emperor Showa, took on more public duties. Politically, parties like the Sayukai and the Kensikai vied for power. After Prime Minister Kato Takaki's sudden death in office, 1926, leadership passed to Wakatsuki Ryujiro. But factional struggles hinted that this era of Taisho democracy might be running out of steam. On December 25, 1926, Emperor Taisho passed away. His reign, short but so eventful, quietly drew to a close. With that, Japan entered a new era, Showa. Little did people know how drastically that name enlightened harmony would be tested in the years ahead. So let's take a moment to reflect. In just 14 years, Japan saw democratic ideals flourish and falter, experienced a world war, tasted an economic boom and bust, endured a devastating earthquake, and embraced a cultural renaissance like no other. Talk about a wild ride. Taisho may have been brief, but in that short span, it showed us the possibilities of rapid modernization, vibrant art, and people's power to shape politics. It also reminded us that nothing, no city, no system is unbreakable. But perhaps that very fragility spurred the creativity and energy we still admire today. And that, my dear time travelers, concludes our journey through Taisho. But Japan's story rolls on into Showa and beyond, with more twists and turns than any scriptwriter could invent. If you're ready for even more drama, conflict, and reinvention, stick around. Our historical adventure is far from over.